My name is Allison Cook, and I am the president of Marauder Video Productions. And Marauder Video Productions is a club exclusively at Millersville University. So who we are. So MVP is a student-run organization that specializes in producing student-based ideas for films. So what we do is we talk about like ideas that maybe a student has, and we share them at a meeting, and then we vote on what to do. And then we produce that film. We find actors, we find producers, like in the club or just off campus in general, and we film it and we also edit it. And members gain experience and knowledge of our filming through phases of pre-production, production, and post-production. And as I've mentioned before, members have the opportunity to write scripts, they can participate in the film by acting, they could direct, they can produce, or they can edit the film. So I'm just going to talk about a few board members. I'm the first one here because I'm the president of Marauder Video Productions. I'm a sophomore. My major is biology, and I have 2 minors in psychology and 1 in creative writing and publishing. My club role is just to maintain MVP, to make sure that everything's running smoothly. I'm in charge of running meetings, scheduling things, hosting events, and anything else. I love cartoons, I like drawing and writing, I love alternative music, especially Philly's 104.5 alternative rock, and I like flowers and plants as well. I don't like horror movies, they terrify me, and it's ironic because we are kind of writing a horror comedy student film right now in our club. I also don't like roller coasters because I'm afraid of heights, and I don't like getting shots at the doctor's office. So that's a little bit about me. So the next person who he was unable to attend tonight is Ben Graham, and he's the vice president. He's also a sophomore, but his major is in communications, media, and broadcasting. His minor is in film, and his club role is to just help the president and with anything, and to help the club as a whole. And he helps helps with managing the club and also connecting with new members and old members. So Ben likes films. He really likes films. He loves analysis, critique, history. He also likes model building and gaming with the boys. And he does not like TikTok. He also doesn't like the Fast and the Furious. And he also does not like country music, but a lot of people don't like country music. All right.
Hi, my name is Alex Colgate. I'm a sophomore and my major is meteorology, and I'm the secretary for MVP. And my club role is to send out emails or updating members about meetings and events, and I also help the club stay organized and help out with different roles like spreading news of the club out, and I also frequently communicate with the board. So some of my hobbies are taking pictures or videos of weather events that happen around my town or whoever I happen to be. I like weather, cameras, Italian food, music, and adventure games. And I don't like modern television, having too much homework, trap music, or bees.
Hello, I'm Elias Peluso, and I'm a sophomore robotics major. I'm not a film major, but I do have many years of experience with films for my own personal projects and my own YouTube channel. And my job is the marketing director, and that means I make the promotions and advertisements for the club that are the posters and things like that. My likes include music, because I play guitar and ukulele, Nintendo, Steven Universe, robotics, of course, Legos, and Chuck E. Cheese. And I don't like using profanities. I don't like watching medical shows, and I don't like sauerkraut. And that's all a little about me.
So we also have another board member. He was unable to make it tonight. His name is Kevin Nix, and he is our treasurer. He's also a sophomore, and his major is in English, and he manages and maintains anything with money. So our finances, our banking accounts, stuff like that, fundraising, all that stuff. And then finally we have Kyle, and I'm not going to try to pronounce his last name because I will mess up badly. He is the technical director, and he is a sophomore, and he's also a meteorology major. He assists in technical aspects of video work and logistics. enjoys discovering editing techniques and photography, but right now he's away for a photo shoot, smiley face, and he didn't put a picture in because he's always behind the camera, so we don't see him that much because he's always behind the camera. And that's just a little bit about us. So like I said, we script, we write, we edit, we direct video projects with a team. Everyone works as a team. We host fun events. We've talked with local filming companies, and we've hosted like just some virtual game nights just to help everyone, you know, be close during this pandemic. So that's a little bit about us. I'm going to stop sharing right now. There we go.
Sweet. It's so nice to meet all of you. You have a really interesting bunch, a really like varied group of students in your club, which I think is cool. All of us are music majors, so it's cool that you have various majors represented in the video club. It shows how much interest there is in videography, just in general.
All right, cool. So moving on from that, David, would you like to introduce yourself to us?
Sure thing. Sounds good. My name is David Odonahue. I'm from, if you guys go to Millersville, you might actually know where this is. I'm from Fleetwood, Pennsylvania, which is a super small town, like 25 minutes away from Reading, and like probably 45 minutes to an hour away from Lancaster. I always say that I'm from Philly and then kind of work my way down to Fleetwood because people have no idea where like all of those smaller cities actually are. I've started taking pictures towards like the back end of high school and started going on tour with bands when I was like 17, and then sort of found my way to Nashville, and then through Nashville sort of found my way to LA. So I split time between Nashville and LA, and sort of to sum up what I do, at least for work, is I am like basically like a music photojournalist and photographer, and also a music video director. So those are kind of like the two things that I mainly do. And in regards to likes and dislikes, I probably say that I really like cycling, like being on a bike. I really like being outside. And dislikes, I don't know, there's not a ton that I can think of off like the top of my head, but if I think of any, I can let you know later on. But yeah, so I got an email from, is it Anime or Anime?
Anime.
Anime, that's what I figured. So I got an email from Anime. She knows my sister, so she was like, yo, do you want to talk to our group? And I said, yeah, sure. I always really like sort of reconnecting with different entities and sort of elements of Pennsylvania, because I feel like I grew up in a really small town and have had a chance to work with and connect with some pretty cool people, and I just didn't, I don't know that that was really like presented to me as an option from like where I grew up, and especially sort of my upbringing. Like I was homeschooled, and then I didn't go to college, so there's different elements of my upbringing that I feel like don't necessarily add up to where I kind of have ended up in my career, and hopefully will continue to go to. So I always like to talk to people from Pennsylvania and be like, yo, there's a lot of stuff that you can do that's not necessarily right in front of you, but it's totally possible. So anyways, thank you for having me. I'm stoked to chat with you guys.
Awesome. All right, cool. So jumping right into it, I'm just really curious. What made you guys, and I know both of you were kind of referring to this in your general descriptions, but what made you guys originally get into photography and videography?
No, that's a good question. So my grandpa was a photographer, and then so was my uncle, his son, who is my mom's brother. So I was sort of always intrigued by it. And my family would always get me like little cameras and stuff when I was a kid. My sister and I would make movies and whatnot. So I guess that was kind of like video and photography. But then when I was in high school, I was at this music festival, it was like a Christian music festival. And a friend of mine at the time was like, yo, I have an extra camera. I have an extra photo pass. I know that you like pictures. I went to a photography. Did you guys have a VOTEC school in your high school? Do you know what that is? Like vocational school? That's not really like that common outside of Pennsylvania, which is really funny. But I went to a photography VOTEC class, even though I was homeschooled, I was able to go, which is really cool. So I did that for like half of the school year. And sort of learned the basics of just like how a camera works and what all of the dials mean and all of the different sort of camera jargon, how it actually translates to what you're doing when you make a picture. And I stopped halfway through because I was playing music at the time. I was in a band and I thought I was going to be like Paramore. So I quit photography and did that for a little while. Circled back to the music festival. A friend lent me a camera and I was like, oh, I didn't know that you could like make pictures of bands playing music. And that was sort of what picked it up from that point. I went, oh, okay, cool. I found something. And then I started to find photographers who were going on tour with bands and taking pictures. And this was sort of right at the cusp of Instagram becoming, you know, normal for everyone to have. Like iPhones were, you know, everyone had an iPhone at this point. And Facebook was still super relevant at the time too. So I started touring with bands really slowly. Like I didn't like jump right into it. I was like working with a friend of mine at the time who is one of my best buds. He was doing a project. So I was in the studio with him, making pictures and videos of him making an album essentially. And then after that, I started touring. So long story short, I basically kind of like fell into it a little bit because I always had an interest in it slightly. And then someone was like, here, you can do this. And I went, oh, okay, cool. I think this is what I want to do now. So yeah, after I graduated high school is when I started to actually do it more full time, I guess is what you could put it.
Gotcha. Anyone from MVP have any other insight on that too?
I mean, I'll start off. So me and my friends, when we were, I think in middle school, we would just kind of like film. My friend she had a video camera, and we would just kind of like go outside, film, and do whatever. And I got into filming, and during high school, I had to create like a video project just for like a trailer, and I did that. It was fun, very fun. There were a lot of bloopers, which was awesome. But I think the thing that really attracted me to Marauder Video Productions was the ability to write scripts and also direct and act. I really love to write. I got into that hobby when I was in 7th grade, and I just kept on writing. So, but also with this club, I do want to learn how to film and shoot things, because I think that's like a very efficient skill to have. But also it's fun. It's just fun to create your own content, whether it's just the memes or if it's actually like a really nice short film. Like it's just something cool and wonderful, and I really wanted to learn that.
Cool. Anyone else from MVP before we move on to the next one?
For me, it was like mainly weather that started my interest in filming, I guess. I started off with like my phone, like in like 2012. I'd like film like just random stuff, and I'd just post it to like social media, to like Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. And over the years, I just had a fixation to like record weather, like any type of weather, and I kind of just learned like how to film stuff through that, I guess. So.
Yeah. Oh, may I go? Oh, yes. For me, it started with video games. I wanted to film my gameplay videos and put it on YouTube. So I did that back in 2014, I think. And from there, my channel was just basically a very little gameplay and also a little bit of those 3DS footnotes from back in the day. And then I posted my elementary school talent show that I did in 2012. It was a Ducks on live action, and that went viral. And then I really got into YouTube, so I started making more series. I made a robot series called Mips Adventures. This is my favorite one of my projects, because my family and I all voice them and drive around little remote control robots and make it into a canon series. And my channel has only been kept up with new videos every month since.
Cool, awesome. So on the next point I have here is and I know David, you talked about this a little bit from the last question, but when you are at a certain point where you're really getting into photography, videography, all that aspect, what goes like through the process or in your head when you're like trying to get gigs and like trying to find those gigs? And I know you're saying like maybe those opportunities are right in front of you, but what did you do to find some of these opportunities?
That's a super good question. I think that there's something that could sort of be talked about a little bit more in regards to getting more work like in this field, especially if you're freelance. And it's just reaching out to people. Like I can basically trace back like every single opportunity that I've ever had in my career through me just cold calling someone. So when I first started shooting shows, I would find bands that I liked that were coming through town. I would shoot a lot of stuff at the Chameleon Club, honestly. And I would find bands and then I would go on their Facebook page and then I would find their press contact or their manager. And I would just say, yo, if you give me a press pass, I'll come shoot this show. And then I'll just send you all the photos afterwards. So I started doing that. And from there, it was sort of finding bands that were like in my tier of success. Like back when I was first starting, I probably wouldn't be able to reach out to a super big band or even like a mid-level band and have them hit me back or pay me because I have nothing in my portfolio that would necessarily qualify me for that job. So long story short, like, and this is the story for a lot of people that I know that are sort of in my space, is like, you just do like free stuff until you can't take it anymore. So I was just like gigging for free for like so long and like reaching out to people. Like I got the first job I did with Coin was because I cold called their manager and they went on my website and they saw photos of a band of a band called Joywave that I took photos of for buddies of mine. And they were like, oh, cool, he took photos of this band. And it was like Joywave and Young the Giant were like the two bands I like took photos of. And they were like, oh, cool, like I like those bands. Like, let's bring this kid on tour. And I had taken photos of Young the Giant for free because I was taking photos of Joywave for free because I knew them because I was at a Betty Who show for free. And I just like introduced myself to Joywave afterwards. And I was like, yo, let me get your email. Like, I'll send you the photos. Long story short, so the reason I say all this is sort of a long answer, I'm sorry, but the reason I say all this is because like I did all of this like free work, right? Until I reached out to a band that I was like, okay, I think I can get like paid for this. So I reached out to Coin and they were like, oh, cool, like we like those bands that you took a photo of, like let's bring them out. And then I still worked for Coin for free because they didn't have any money for like the longest time. And yeah, like you kind of just have to like look at the stuff that you want to do and then basically just say like, hey, I'm here, like I can do it. So like I got the job with Coin because I cold called their manager. I got the job with Laney because I cold called their manager like 3 times. I just emailed their manager and I was like, hey, my name is David. Like this band I know knows this band. Let me just, take photos. And then I did stuff with Laney for free until I, was qualified enough for the job to start getting paid for it. I got the job with Sasha because I was working with Laney and their manager was like, I've got this new artist, you should work with her. So like, there's sort of this mystique around, oh, how do you, start working with these people? Like, surely they're reaching out to you because, you have these artists and these people in your portfolio. And there is an element of that that's true, especially the higher up of clientele that you start to acquire, like people will reach out to you. That totally happens organically. But basically like all of my big, like consistent clients were because I reached out to them first. So again, sorry for the long answer. Long story short, just don't be afraid to like reach out to people. That's how it worked for me. Like I was touring with this band from Mechanicsburg. No, not Mechanicsburg. From Phoenixville, named Coastal Rise, which was like a Christian like ska band basically. And they're like amazing. They're like great people. And I was just like gigging with them doing like festivals. And I just met people that sort of like introduced me to the right people to where I was able to move to Nashville. So again, I'm sort of like jumping off of like my previous answer, but just don't, I got the gig with that band because I reached out to them first. And through that gig and being on the road, I met more people, and then I reached out to them, and then I reached out to them, and then I reached out to them. So it's sort of this long line of like, just don't, like, don't expect things to come to you by any means. Like, you don't want to blow people up and badger them and be like annoying. But if you sort of put a bug in their ear enough times, chances are they're probably going to hit you back in some capacity and say, hey, we'll reach out to you in the future. And then if they need someone, they'll go, oh, there's that person that reached out to me. Or they're just going to hit you back and say, actually, no, like, we do, need you for this thing. Like, are you down to do it? So that's kind of like how it works for me, at least. And I'm still doing that. Like, I just had a job like last week with this really cool guy who has a podcast. He's not a musician, but he's got a really cool podcast about holistic living and like mindful health. And I just hit him up. I was like, yo, like, here's my website, if you want to do anything together. And then he hit me back and he went, oh yeah, good timing. I'm starting this like video series. Like, do you want to shoot it? And I said, yeah, totally. So it kind of just like, literally like in the last 2 months that happened like again. So anyway, that's kind of my story.
Oh, that's cool. Thank you. No, we appreciate all of that. It's interesting seeing some of the parallels, because at least for musicians and stuff like that, we kind of see the same thing where we're kind of expecting it to come to us, but in reality, you really just have to like put yourself out there and show that you want to do it. And that's really what is actually appealing to people that are looking for someone to do these things.
100%. Yeah. Like being sort of like humbled enough to put yourself out there first is like very attractive to people that need work,
And it's one of those things where like somebody may not be thinking of it, kind of like what you mentioned, somebody may not be thinking of it immediately, but you mentioning something to them puts that idea in their head, or continues a thought or conversation they've already had, just haven't had the time to think about.
Yeah, that's so valid. That's totally right.
But kind of on that same one, and you kind of, again, I ask a question, you get through and you answer another one somehow.
Oh shoot, I'm sorry.
No, you're good. No, it's perfect. But kind of on that, I know you talked about like sometimes finding gigs, or like you were saying, like working for free for a little bit, like sometimes getting to the paid gig is sometimes really difficult. Besides that, what other challenges like kind of showed up while you were doing some of this, or in the steps of doing it?
That's a good question. I would say like off like the front end of working was trying to find a job that I could hold down while like I was touring. So my career path might be like a little different than maybe some of the interests that y'all have, because I was specifically, when I started shooting, I said I wanted to shoot bands on tour. That was, my main goal is I want to go on tour and I want to shoot bands on the road. So for me, it was about, finding a job that I could work when I was back in town to sort of pay my rent and my bills, but that was also down to let me leave for a few weeks at a time, or a weekend at a time, or however it might be. So like, and until I was able to start making money from photography and video, basically. Once you start doing that, then sort of, oh, cool, the financial problems are at least a little bit remedied, because I'm getting paid to do this job so I can pay my rent from doing this. But that's an initial challenge. I think it's about, creating the space for it is pretty difficult, but I'd say that it is worth it, obviously, in the long run. It will eventually, if your work is good and the hang is good, like it will eventually tip over to where you start making money. You don't have to have a part-time job anymore. So that's a hard thing. Another hard thing is basically sort of just keeping up and making work that you're proud of. I would say that a solution for that is something that I like to do is always just be ingesting other people's work, watching music videos or finding people that I like on Instagram or photographers. And I watch a lot of YouTube, honestly, on YouTube a lot, looking at stuff that makes me feel good and inspires me. So those are a couple of things. And then there's like the gear limitation as well. You want to have equipment that aligns with your skill level. You don't want to be shooting like huge bands on, like a crop sensor, camera that isn't really that good. but those things sort of come with time. You don't necessarily need to go out and buy the most expensive camera and the most expensive lens. I still shoot on the gear that I got when I kind of like first started doing this after I moved away. Like I have these two prime pancake lenses that are like this big. It's a 50 millimeter and a 28 millimeter lens, and then this like Nikon DSLR. It's a full frame DSLR. It's like a good camera, but it's also from like 2013. It's really old, and like basically like all of like my biggest pictures I've ever taken have been on that camera. So you can't necessarily be, you know, like constantly always looking at like the next gear thing, but you want to make sure that you sort of set yourself up with stuff that's going to last you for a really long time. I think that's what I did initially, is I spent like a decent chunk of money at the beginning, and I was like, cool, I hope this stuff is going to last me for a while. And I haven't replaced it in what is now like 7 years. So yeah, so those are a few things right off the bat that I think are challenging, but it's sort of about like longevity and investment, I think, are kind of where you want your head to be at.
Did you ever have any like bigger gigs where maybe like the artist manager or whatever, like the tour manager was like, actually, we want you to use this equipment like while you shoot the artist, and you're like,
not necessarily. But that's a good question, because I think that a lot of times you can encounter different people like to be photographed different ways. You know, obviously, like everyone has a side, right? So like someone's right side might be their pretty side as opposed to their left side. So the longer that you do it, you can sort of start to pick up on those things from, you know, the energy that people are putting off. Or you might just have like a dialogue with the client. You know, they might sit with you as you're editing photos and they go, oh, I like this one, I like this one. So you just slowly start to learn what they like. But in regards to gear, I haven't necessarily encountered someone on like the client's team necessarily being like, we want to shoot on this, you know, setup specifically. I would think that they would sort of lean on you to find something that's gonna, you know, make their artist look the best. Different cameras also serve different purposes. So like, depending on what you're shooting, you might need to rent something. Like there's a few different factors that could play a role in that, but I like that question though.
Cool. Actually, great segue. I was actually just going to ask. So
I'm gonna need to plug my computer in. I'm so sorry. I'm still listening, but I'm just gonna disappear for a second.
No, you're good. You're good. I'll ask the question while you're doing that. So
Go for it.
I'll speak slower. So we were talking about equipment in a bunch of different ways for a little bit. Is there any were there any times, I know you talked about longevity and just reliability, are there any other factors to gear that you look for? Like if you're buying new gear or looking for an investment in your gear, are there other factors that you look for when doing that?
Yes, totally. Here, sorry, one sec. There's something, you know, like the little mag strip and like the MacBook, there's like something metal stuck in it that's blocking me from putting my charger in. Sorry, one sec, guys. This is so wacky.
You're good. Take your time.
We love technology.
Yeah, this is crazy.
While we take a short break while he figures this out, anybody think of any questions that you may have in the meantime?
Yeah, I'm gonna mute myself real quick.
Yeah, we're looking at you, Jake. Come on, drop some questions. You know you want to. The mercury Gatorade is definitely not helping the situation.
I mean, not really a question, but like more of a statement is like how many parallels that I'm seeing between like the process of like photography and videography and stuff and like musicians and all that. So that's my observation, especially with like gear and all of that. Like you don't want to operate something that you don't know how to operate. So
that's why I asked about the gear, because there was this event here in Reading and there was this videographer that's just actually not that great of a person, but he is like this really big videographer, and he was doing like a live stream back when, like, I mean, COVID's still a thing, but when there were a ton of live streams going on, and he had Michael, I just had like a personal experience with him. That's why he had so much gear with him, just like loads and loads of gear and cameras that he rented, like thousands of dollars worth. And I was just like, this just seems like so much for a live stream, you know? Like, and then I found out that the place that was hosting the live stream had like requested that he got that specific gear, and it was the rent cost was covered, I guess, in whatever that they were paying him with, but it was a lot, and that's why I was like wondering if like certain artists are like crazy about what they're shot with, or if it's more like just make me look a certain way. That's how
I mean, like, again, same thing with like musicians and stuff with like the music equipment. There's some riders that are like really specific as to what gear needs to be at a show and what can't be there. So,
and like in a studio and stuff. So
Yeah, cool. Well, welcome back, David.
Back.
Plugging in your computer.
Situation fixed. What was the last question that you just asked? I'm so sorry.
You're good. You're good. So, in reference to your gear, I know you talked about reliability and longevity. Are there any other factors that go into picking your new gear or like sustaining your old gear?
Yeah, I would say you want to look at the type of shooting that you're doing and then get gear that caters to that. Like if you want to shoot portraits, you should probably get a camera that has great skin tones, and you want to get lenses that maybe have really beautiful like bokeh behind the person when it's out of focus or things like that. So I would say like similar to music, you know what I mean? Like you're going to play a Strat on something that sounds really good with the Strat, and you're going to play like, you know, I don't know, like a hollow body on something that sounds really good with a hollow body. Camera equipment can be very similar, especially when you get into like really high-end music videos and you are shooting stuff on like very specific lenses. And this is the same for like movies, stuff like that as well. And you know, you're getting into lens sets that cost like $80,000, $90,000, and then like cameras that cost like $40,000. You know, like that's sort of a different conversation. But like to that same idea, like you want to get stuff that kind of fits like what you're looking to do. And a good way to do that is, this is sort of a deep hole to dive in, and I wouldn't recommend it like lasting for a really long time, but look at work that you really admire and then go, okay, cool, like what was this shot with? And then you can go and find out the equipment that was used for it. Like if you like a specific photographer, you can be like, oh, okay, like what did this person shoot with? And then it's like they shot everything on like this camera with this lens, and you can be like, okay, I want to take those type of pictures, I want to shoot this camera and this lens. So I would say, yes, like definitely get stuff that's going to last you a long time and it's going to have some grit. So if you like drop it or something, it's not going to break the first time. You can put like thousands of clicks through it or thousands of, you know, hours through the sensor, and it's not going to wear down. But also just look at like the type of shooting that you're going to be doing. You know, like if you guys know a little bit about cameras, like if you're shooting a lot of stuff in low light and you want something like pretty practical, that's small and does well in low light, you can get like a Sony like A7S, and like that series, like those cameras do really well in low light. But if you're shooting everything outdoors and you kind of have like, you know, that's sort of a look that you're looking for, you can find a different camera that does really well outdoors with different lenses. So yeah, long story short, I would say just like, don't, you know, pigeonhole yourself into like one type of shooting specifically, but find gear that maybe aligns with the type of work that you want to make, and that's only going to do you favors. It's just going to make your job easier. I think that's sort of the long and the short of it.
Cool. And then spanning off from the entire, I guess, like technical side and gear sense of everything, like we're aiming our gear to be able to shoot specific things and have these different effects. When it comes to the creative aspect itself, like when you go to, like say you're booked for a photo shoot or something like that, and you go to the gig itself, how does the environment like play into what you're doing that day? Like, is it all pre-planned? Do you guys kind of just figure it out as it goes? Like, what's the general vibe that keeps going on during things like that?
Yeah, I would say that you want to be as prepared as possible, especially with something like a photo shoot. Depending on what tier you're starting at, you're going to have a producer who's sort of planning a lot of that stuff for you in advance. They're booking the studio. They're making sure that you have the lights figured out. They're getting crafty, which is all the food. They're making sure that, you know, your artist is like really comfortable. I'd say that's like the main thing, is that you always just want to have whoever you're shooting be as comfortable as possible and as themselves as possible. So a little trick is always like have a Bluetooth speaker with some music playing in the background, especially if you're taking photos, right? If it's just photos, like have a vibe be really cozy and comfortable for everyone to just feel like at ease and at home. And then for video projects too, you know, having everything be as like figured out in advance as possible is only going to do you favors because it just puts everybody at ease. So yeah, in regards to like the environment that you're in and what could come like creatively from that, a lot of times that stuff's going to be figured out in advance as well. Like when you start to really dig into this stuff and you're kind of like doing it for work more, like there's going to be an expectation to have like mood boards figured out in advance, and that's just basically like inspiration photos of, you know, all of the stuff that you want to shoot. And there might be even pose ideas and different, you know, outfits and different textures that you're shooting against that are all going to be sort of on a, you know, a one sheet, a PDF basically that has ideas for that stuff kind of figured out in advance. So yeah, like everything that you can do before you get to shooting is only going to help your mind be open to the possibility of what type of work you can make that day. So yeah, prep work. It's funny, like pre-production is like not something, when I first started shooting, I didn't even know it was like a thing, you know, and it's basically everything. It is going to determine whether or not your day is going to be successful, it's going to be unsuccessful. And that will enable creativity. So to sort of answer that question in like a funny sort of logistical roundabout way.
Gotcha. Cool. Yeah, I think the same thing kind of happens again, drawing another parallel to music where like everybody just kind of thinks you kind of just start in the middle where you like kind of think it just happens, and then you slowly work backwards to where kind of the quote unquote actual start is kind of in pre-production. Music has the same thing. And it's just crazy. It's just like a whole retrospective like change.
Yeah, my wife is a songwriter and she's a producer, and the parallels that we've found in our career paths are like pretty alarming, you know, not in a scary way, but it's almost like, oh dude, we're basically like doing, our process is basically like the same thing. You know, the difference is that maybe if you're, because I know that most of you guys are in music, if you're like going into a writing session or you're going in, like if you're going into like a writing session, like you are sort of expected to create something from scratch like that day. But if you're recording a song and it's already written, then yeah, it's a pretty similar process. Like everything is sort of planned out in advance, I guess.
Mm-hmm. And kind of jumping off of that, and it's okay if there's nothing else on this topic as well, but I was just going to switch from, or not switch from, but go specifically like more something like directing a music video or something like that. Is everything planned out in the same aspect?
Yeah.
Or are there some things that are a little moved around depending on the piece?
Yeah, no, I mean, I would say that you sort of always want to be open to possibilities of a cool shot that kind of might like pop up, like, oh, you know, like the light's really good over here, like we'll shoot this really fast, or oh wait, you know, I have this idea for this frame, you know, maybe we can kind of approach it this way. But 9 times out of 10, especially if there's like a lot of money being spent on a music video, everything is going to be planned out in advance and everything is going to be scheduled out in advance. Nothing ever runs on schedule, but everything will be as scheduled out as possible. You know, like if we're starting at 10 a.m., we're shooting this exact setup with this lighting, with this shot every single time. So yeah, like music videos especially, that's like really blocked out, and you really want to have all of that like, and it's not so rigid to where there isn't any creativity on the day, because that's not true at all. Like the people who are lighting the set are really creative. Your director of photography or your cinematographer is very creative. They're going to be, you know, figuring out amazing ways to capture it on the day. And then the artist and their performance is really creative. And then as a director, your creative process was mostly figured out leading up to those moments, and then you're seeing it through. Like that's sort of, in regards to music videos, I would say that's really the process, at least in my experience. And seeing, I've been on some pretty big music videos that as like a photographer, a lot of, you know, it's the same. It's like the same thing. It just depends on how much money you have to put into the production.
Gotcha. Cool. And before I go on to anything else, I just wanted to see if anybody has any questions. We'll come back at the end for any more questions, but I just wanted to see if anybody has any alarming questions on anything we just talked about.
I have a question. Sorry about that. When it comes to photo shoots or filming music videos, is there like a industry standard for like the line of equipment you should have or is like expected to be used during these like tasks and jobs?
Yeah, that's a great question. I would say that when you start to hit a certain dollar amount that's being spent on a music video, you're going to shoot a music video on Alexa Mini, on Arri Alexa Mini, which is a camera. If you guys have like dug into video production at all, I'm sure you've heard of it. Or you might basically like any like Arri Alexa camera, because there's a few different ones. That's like what you're going to shoot on. You might shoot on Red cameras too. That's sort of like a similar tier, similar quality of camera, but a different look. Like Arri leans more towards sort of like a classic filmic look, and Red leans more towards like a digital look. Like action movies and car movies are shot on Red, and then something like Lady Bird was shot on Alexa Mini. You know what I mean? So like that. Those are two different examples, but I would say, yeah, like once you start to hit a certain dollar amount, like Alexa Mini is sort of your baseline. And then in regards to lighting, like you're not really necessarily going to handle any of that. Like you have crews that are designated specifically to do that. And then sort of to jump off of that, in regards to lenses, that also really depends on the look that you're going to chase after for that project. To kind of like speak on that specifically, because what might happen is you might go, okay, cool, like I'm gonna go find like Alexa Mini. And I did this too when I was first starting. Like I was like, oh man, like this is what everybody shoots on, I'm gonna go find it. Just the brain of that body, like the camera body, is $40,000. It's really, really expensive. And then the lenses that couple with that are outrageously expensive as well. So you're not expected to own that equipment necessarily. Like you can go and find a production company or a rental house or a camera rental company that you can rent it from, and it's pretty pricey to rent it like per day. But that's something I sort of started to do at the beginning. Like even if I didn't have that much money to like put into a music video, and even if it was just me and like the band, and we didn't have any lighting or a set or anything, like I would still go out of my way to try and rent like a really nice lens set and rent like an Alexa Mini, because I wanted my work to basically look as high quality as possible, like right off the bat. And even if it meant I was putting like less money in my pocket, it was sort of an investment like down the line, to where people could go to my reel, they could go to my website and be like, wow, like all this stuff looks really, really nice. Because like there's a difference between shooting on like a cheaper camera and a more expensive camera. That's why the more expensive camera costs what it does. So sorry for the long answer. I'm sort of rambling, like giving as much input into these answers as I can. But to answer your question, yes, there is. When you hit a certain dollar amount, basically you're sort of expected to shoot on this tier. But as a director, or even like a cinematographer, like you're not expected to own that stuff. It's all going to come from the production company that you're working with for that project.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Cool. Yeah, no shame in rambling. More information is always better than less.
Okay, cool. You'll find me doing that a lot, so that's good.
Cool. So jumping off of that, I know we've kind of alluded to this a little bit, kind of with the tier system and stuff like that, but as you work up, or as you have worked up the tiers of like clients, like what have been the biggest difference between like higher tier clients and lower tier clients in terms of just like status?
There's definitely a little bit more pressure as you're working with those people to deliver really good work that is in line with what the client needs. And you have so much less time. I would feel like that's the big thing, is those people are so busy like all the time that you really like your time to work with them is so much slimmer. And you're definitely less involved in the creative process depending on what your role in that project is. So yeah, I would say that's the biggest thing, is basically like you're interacting with the artists like so much less, like with some of the bigger clients that I've worked with, and we can like touch on this a little bit later, like you're not really like talking to them pretty much ever. Like they're in their trailer or they're like in hair and makeup until it's time to like come out and shoot. And then they come on the set and you shoot them, and then you kind of say bye, and then like that's it, the perception of like what it's like to actually take photos of like celebrity or like big artists, unless you're that person's photographer specifically, which can totally happen, or you're their creative director, which kind of couples in with being their photographer and being in charge of sort of all of their visuals. Like most of the time you're going to be with them for like, you know, a very short amount of time. So I would say that would be the biggest difference. And I can give like specific examples of that, but like that would sort of like as an umbrella, that's kind of the baseline, I would say.
Cool. And again, continuing the whole train of differences in client profiles, we saw, our board and I saw that you worked with Doja Cat and some other people like that. Didn't try to make that rhyme, but that just rhymed somehow. In a situation like that, was it kind of the same with some other artists where it just like kind of happened, or was there more of like a formula to that since with an artist at that level?
A formula to like acquiring that job, or like working with them, you know, like
Kind
on
of,
set?
yeah, kind of both. Like, did it just kind of happen? Did you cold call somebody, or was there something different versus everything else?
Yeah, so Doja specifically, that was kind of one of those more long-term relationships that sort of panned out in a cool way. And and again, being a director, like I have relationships with like video commissioners, and December of 2019, this guy who I've worked with sort of in passing at Atlantic was like, yo, we have these music videos for this project. Like, do you want to go and take pictures of the music videos? And I was like, yeah, totally. Like, I love doing that. So, and that was a few different artists, but Doja being one of them. So basically, like, I was there kind of as like a BTS guy, just to kind of like be there and like capture the set. But they ended up, you know, enjoying the images enough and needing a hole to be filled for like the single artwork for those songs. So they ended up like using the images that I took for like the single artwork for those songs that they were shooting the music videos for. So that happened. It happened like really organically, and that was not necessarily through a cold call, but it was sort of through like different vines and my work that had kind of happened before that. Like I just knew this guy who needed pictures and was like, yo, like you're in LA, do you want to do this? And I was like, yeah, 100%, that sounds amazing. So that's sort of a good example of like being on set and like my pictures are like not the priority for the day. You know what I mean? Like they're there to capture a music video. Like I'm like very low on like the totem pole of importance, but it's sort of like finding those moments in between shots, like in between outfits to be like, hey, like let's steal away real quick and like take some photos. And there ended up being some like really special images from that day. So that was kind of how that one materialized, I would say, is just like through this guy I knew who worked at Atlantic, and we still work together, he and I, like every now and again. But yeah, that was really cool. I was felt very privileged to be in the position to take photos of those people.
Yeah, I bet that was really cool. And at least from what I was getting from that too, like after a while and after some after some marketing and just like networking, you kind of like the trees and chains that you kind of find these gigs like slowly shifts as your network shifts or your network
100%
attachment shift.
Yeah, like I can basically, like I can sort of give you like a short story. Like I had done this video, this producer, this is sort of a long story, but to kind of give you like what are the vines that like weave their way through the music industry and how it can work in your favor if you like continue to sort of show up, I guess. There's this producer I work with in Nashville who's a good friend of mine, and she was like, yo, I've got this commission for this music video, do you want to write on it? And I said, yeah, totally. So I wrote a treatment for this band that just signed to Atlantic, and it ended up winning the bid, which was really cool. So we shot the music video, and the video commissioner for that project has just become a homie since then. And I was in New York on a job, and I hit him up and I was like, hey, like, do you want to like grab a coffee? And he was like, yeah, totally, just come by the office, like I'll show you around. So I went over to like the Atlantic offices in New York and met with him. And literally, like, as we were kind of like weaving our way through the halls of like the video department, he was like, hey, like, this is another commissioner, like you should meet this guy, like you'll work on something together. So at that point I was like, oh yeah, like nice to meet you, like I worked on this project that you commissioned videos for that artist. And he was like, yes, that's right, I saw those videos, like that was cool. And then it was like, nice to meet you, see you later. And then like a couple of months later, the guy who I met in the office because I swung by to say hi to like my other commissioner I worked with is the guy who hit me up for the Dojo project. So does that make sense? It's basically like, that was kind of like full circle moment of like, if I wouldn't have reached out and said hey to my friend Wes, who works at Atlantic, and then met this other commissioner, like there's a chance that that project might not have happened. You know what I mean? So yeah, like you said, the farther deep in you get, like your network is going to grow organically if you continue to like be kind and be like a warm person. And like that was sort of like how that played out. So like what you described is literally like, that's why I feel sort of like funny telling that story normally, because it's like, look at, you know, like it's like not like it wasn't, I had nothing to do with that scenario at all. It was literally just like, by continuing to sort of like work with the people that you already work with, you're naturally going to meet more people. And that's how that job materialized.
No, that's really cool. I really like that. It just goes to show again, like what you're saying, just the circle of communication with, especially like just spreading positivity. Like it's amazing just how much like just pursuing that can really take you.
Yeah, that's like, if you're gonna like have your cornerstone be anything, it's just like try to be positive and be grateful. I would say those are sort of the two mantras that I try to live my life by. And by no means am I saying like it works for me, but I'm saying like I think that no harm can come from two of those things. So
cool. Yeah. No, I really like that. So not taking it like a negative turn, but when with all of this with Corona and all that, when everything kind of switched more to streaming and stuff like that, and the market kind of changed, did that change how did that change your career as a photographer and a videographer?
That's a very, very relevant timing question. I had some stuff at the, you know, in like the first part of 2020 that just basically just got canceled, like it did for everybody. I'm not, you know, exclusive in that department. So my wife and I kind of like picked up our pieces and we moved back to our house in Nashville from LA. And I was very privileged to have 3 of like my main clients be in album cycles in 2020. So I feel like my story might be a little different than like most directors or photographers for that matter, because I was able to like consistently work with those clients for all of last year. So sort of like short answer, it definitely like affected my work. But I basically just worked with like my 3 main people last year and was able to have like a relatively normal year. I just didn't work with that many like other people, which I feel like would sort of normally happen. Yeah, 2020 was it was super weird, but I felt very, very privileged to have come out on the other side of it, having made like some of my favorite work that I've ever made.
That's good. Yeah, we had a meeting 2 weeks ago with Greg Barley, a guy that owns Millersville Venue, Phantom Power, and then Logan Sumi, who owns a studio called Rockmill Studios. But anyway, they kind of talked about the same thing, where like they brought up a very good point where like there were a lot of negatives, but at the same time there were also a good transition to a lot of positives, and like a lot of good things came out of that are now a part of the like creative industry that were not previously a factor at all, or really much of an influence.
Yeah,
Nice
I mean, purely from like, yeah, for sure. Like in regards to music specifically, as I mentioned before, my wife is a songwriter, and everyone's been writing on Zoom this, you know, whole last year, and nobody would have been doing that before. Like she has rights with people in like London and Australia, and nobody was really kind of utilizing this format before it was a necessity. And now it's basically just going to be like a standard, you know, like, oh, like, do you want to write with so-and-so? You're in Nashville or you're in LA and they're in Sweden or wherever. You can just hop on your computer and do it. You're going to sort of make it, the process is going to be a little different, but there's definitely like some positives from all of the craziness and the darkness that was last year.
Cool. So from all of that, I think that's all the main points we wanted to hit. For everybody else, we're just going to open this kind of up to a Q&A for both David or MVP if anybody has any questions. So feel free.
I just wanted to ask, like, what for MVP, what have you guys been working on, like, over all of this stuff going on? Because it's been hard for us to do things, so I'm just wondering how you guys are doing stuff as an organization.
Yeah, and that's a good question because, you know, none of us expected us to be totally remote, not a lot of people going back to campus. So what we've been doing is we've been hosting Zoom calls because most of our club members aren't on campus, so there's no way for us to meet. And during the fall semester, really, we were just working on a script we started doing in the spring of 2020, but then that kind of got put on the back burner in March. So we were just picking up with that. We were writing it. We had some fun with that. A lot of creative decisions in that one. We also met up with a local filming company in Lancaster. We reached out to them, just asking like, hey, are you interested in just, you know, kind of giving it, like coming to, well, not to campus, but coming to Zoom and just talking about what you guys do. And they said, yeah, we'd be totally excited to do that. And we met with them. It was great. Like, we learned so much. They were really nice, really friendly. And as for the rest of the fall semester, that was it. I mean, we did host, actually, Elias, you can talk more about this. We did host a event called the YouTube informational event, and Elias, he was the one who hosted it, and it was awesome. So Elias, if you want to talk about that, you're more than welcome to.
Yeah, well, with of course, with all of us at home and everything, I wanted to make an event that that's still related to video production, but could be online. So I hosted a presentation where I basically explained how I started my YouTube channel, and it was less of a technical thing and more of a directional thing, just where to start when you want to start your own YouTube channel and what things to consider. I included everything from copyrights to topics to filming mediums, which you are discussing. So yeah, that was my project last semester.
It was really good, really successful as well. I liked it a lot. And then right now what we're doing is we are still working on a script so that we have something when we go back to campus, we can start working on finding actors and start to film it. But we're also working on editing a senior project for one of Millersville students. So we're also doing that while we're all remote. And occasionally, you know, we'll just have like a little party night where we just get together, chat, have fun, relax. Because, you know, why not?
Do Among Us.
Yeah, we'll do Among Us, yeah.
I'm glad you guys have been able to do stuff because, you know, obviously it's not exactly what we want to be doing right now, but hopefully in the future, when we can start doing in-person things and having, you know, shows and stuff, we can probably work together and have you guys do some of what David does for us, which we've had in the past, but, you know, just getting things back up and running again.
Yeah, totally. I can't wait for that day.
Yeah, I think we're all in that same boat.
Yeah, MVP, do you have, so we record these meetings and post them on YouTube. So if you have any like advice for students that, you know, might be on like incoming to Millersville that are interested in videography or photography, do you have any like advice for them or how they would get involved with that with you guys?
Yeah, that's a good question. And our club's open to everyone, regardless of their major. I mean, most of the people in their club, they're not communication majors. Like, we're all like scattered, and that's good because we all bring like different ideas to the table. We have actually, I can post the our YouTube channel in the chat because we also have a YouTube channel. There isn't a lot on it as of now, but we did last fall create like a little video for like a video contest. So that was like our most recent thing we did. It was really good. It was really fun too. And as for new members, if they are interested in videography, like, yeah, come check us out. I mean, like I said, you don't need any experience. We welcome all new members. We have Twitter, we have Instagram. Our best information is probably going to be on Get Involved. But yeah, I can send a link to the YouTube page.
Cool. Well, real quick, I actually had one. And David, I can share this too, but specifically for you, could we see some of your website actually? I think that'd be really cool to put it on the video for afterwards.
Sure, yeah, that sounds great. Should I do it or does someone else want to pull it up? I'm honestly really bad at Zoom. I don't know if I know how to do this.
You're good. I can pull it up. I just wanted to check and make sure you were cool.
Okay, yeah. No, that's totally chill. Go for it.
All right, let me pull up the website before I
Okay, I now see how to do it. Yeah, I haven't done too many of these. And if they have, they've sort of just been like 2 other people.
Yeah,
you
I
just
feel
kind of
like
say hi and then that's it.
I wish I could relate to that.
Yeah, honestly, I'm so sorry.
And even if you do a lot, it still feels like
It feels like the first time every time.
Especially when you're put on the spot.
That totally
It's
makes
like,
sense.
wait, how do I share my audio? How do I
Yeah.
and then
I feel like
actually
there's a lot of roadblocks.
Yeah, always. And I forgot I didn't save the link, so if somebody has the link, that'd be great.
Oh yeah, I'll send it to you.
Because Google's not very helpful.
Can I just send it in the chat? Is that okay? Or
Yeah,
do you
that's
want me-
perfect.
If you
I was gonna
Google
say,
me,
if
you
this-
will not find anything.
Yeah, it's really. I realized how
I
difficult
am not
it was.
famous in any capacity.
Oh, I was holding out so much hope. No kidding. I was just like, I'm getting Instagrams and everything. I'm just like, this isn't what I wanted, but we're getting there.
When Grant shares the page, David, if you kind of just want to guide him and you can like show us, he can go to different parts of your site and you can tell us what you want to show us.
Cool.
right.
That sounds great. Yeah, this is just sort of a splash that has like my director's reel at the beginning, so you can click through this if you want.
Oh, I love
yeah, so
Showbiz
this is-
Pizza Place.
What's that?
I love Showbiz Pizza Place.
You know about Showbiz Pizza?
Yes.
Dude, that's crazy. Did you go? Like, have you been?
No.
Nobody
I know
knows what this is. It's like a very niche part of the world and of the internet. So I'm like really happy that you know that you know what it is.
My interest in robotics led me to Chuck E. Cheese, and that led me to
Yeah.
the history of it, which led to Showbiz Pizza.
Yeah,
I've never
so
been there, but I know of them.
They don't exist anymore. You know what I mean? Like they're not like a thing. There's only I think. Oh man, I'm so happy that you know what this is. I get to nerd out. I spent an entire day with Aaron Vector, like the guy who like invented
Oh, you did?
those robots. Yeah, like I
Oh,
like know
lucky.
him. Yeah, it's not really. He's crazy. Like, honestly, well, I shouldn't say that. No, he's really like he's a very unique individual. I'll put it that way. That was like I didn't mean to like fly off the handle. But long story short, the band, one of the bands that I work with, the lead singer, he grew up with Showbiz Pizza. He's from West Virginia, and there is a restaurant that has one of the only remaining Rocket Fire Explosion shows in the country. There's only like 3 of them left. And
I know, yeah.
one of them is at Aaron's studio in Orlando, in Florida. And Chase, the singer of this band, reached out to Aaron and was like, hey, like I want to shoot a music video with, it's happened a couple of times before, but not really in the way that we did it. So he reached out to him and Aaron programmed a show to the song that we shot the music video for, which is actually not on my website. I'm now realizing I need to put that on my website. But yeah, we like got to go to his warehouse in Orlando. He has this like 5,000 square foot warehouse with just robots like everywhere. It's so crazy. It's really wild, like old like deteriorating robots where like the faces are falling off and stuff. But like there's so much tech like everywhere. And yeah, so we shot this music video with Aaron, and I shouldn't say that he's crazy. That sounds a little out there. He's like a very he's just sort of like an intense like personality, and I think that's
eccentric?
why he's very
Eccentric?
eccentric.
Okay.
Yes, I'll put it that way. There's lots of stuff like all over the place, but yeah, so he crushed it. He did this amazing programming for this video. So anyways, yeah.
Oh, that's on your website, right?
You know what? It isn't, but I will put it on my website because I actually need to. This is a good reminder that I need to
Okay.
to put it on there.
That's what I'm here for.
Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you guys. But
Yeah.
anyway. Yeah, so this is a section that is just like my sorry, one sec. Okay, there we go. Yeah, this is just like some music videos that I've directed. There's a lot of like tour stuff that isn't on here, but I'm not really like on the road very much anymore. I sort of mentioned that to Ani May, mostly just directing. So these are some projects that I've done in the past with some people that I like really admire, and I feel very grateful that I've had a chance to work with them. And then at the top where it says photography, there's some images in like the artwork tab that were from that project I was telling you guys about for the Birds of Prey soundtrack. So the Doja Cat shoot was in line with these other music videos that I had a chance to be a part of. So all of these images that you see that are for the Birds of Prey project, those were all like on music video sets, which is really cool. So yeah, and then for, I guess, under the promo tab, there's just photos that I've had a chance to take of some cool people. Like there's some more stuff of Doja, Charlotte Lawrence, Luke Bryan. I know that we don't have a ton of country music fans in the house, but that's totally fine. Kelsey Ballerini, and then some photos of Coin, Sweetie. There's this band called the Aces that I work with. They're from Utah. Really like them a lot. Yeah, so just some images that I've taken. They're kind of scattered all over the place, but
I saw on your website you work with I don't know how to pronounce her artist name, but her name's Lauren. It starts with an F. It's like Flurry or
Flurry. Yeah.
She's like a smaller to like beneath like mid-level artist, but I've been listening to her for years. And when I saw you worked with her, I was like just curious as to how you got like involved with her, because she's
so awesome.
Really,
that you know who she is. Yeah, she's my wife, like one of my wife's like really good friends. Like she was in our wedding. My wife has been making an album with her for the past like 3 months. They're working on her next album. But funny enough, I actually met Lauren basically just through like the Nashville grapevine, and we took some photos together, and it was a few months before my wife and I started dating. And Lauren had a show. It was a Flurry show that I was shooting, and then my wife was playing drums for her. And that's actually, my wife and I sort of like connected at that show, which is really funny. But yeah, so basically she's just kind of a friend. And we met a few years ago, just kind of through Nashville, just like from being around. But that's awesome that you know who she is. She has new music coming out that my wife is working on. So you'll get to hear it probably in the next like 6 or 7 months, I would say.
awesome. Cool. Okay.
That's really cool. I'm going to tell her that, you know, that you've been listening to her. She's really rad.
Cool.
Yeah, so this is it. I mean, if anybody has any questions about like any images specifically, I'm more than happy to answer. But I mean, this is it. I try to update this like relatively frequently, but for the most part, like these are sort of like the people that I work with, and there's some outliers that I've had a chance to work with like once or twice. You know, like I don't work with a lot of these like bigger artists recurring, but I'm very grateful that I did have a chance to work with them in the capacity that I did. Yeah.
How recently did you work with Phoebe Ryan? Because when I was looking through your website to post some stuff today, I saw you worked with her, and she played like Firefly or something like 5 years ago when I went, and I've not seen anything like recent from her. But
yeah, she's sort of been, I think she's kind of been doing some stuff. I know she's been putting music out, but I think it's different than what she has done in the past. Maybe we worked together probably like 3 years ago, but she's really sweet. We still like follow each other on Instagram, but I haven't worked with her in a long while. I've worked with her manager. Her manager works with like a couple people who I've worked with. Like I saw someone in the chat mention Lawrence, and I've done some stuff with Lawrence. I worked with them like pretty recently, and he manages them. So I feel like that was sort of like the initial connection. And then he manages another songwriter who I've worked with in the past, but I haven't worked with her in a while. She's great though. She's really sweet.
Yeah, it was really neat to like look at your website when I was talking to Mandy, because I was like, I feel like his catalog is just all these people that I like either listen to now or like used to listen to, and I forgot about it.
Oh, nice. That's awesome. No, that's really cool. I feel very grateful to have worked with the people that I've had the chance to work with. Even looking, I don't like go to my website very often, so it's not very frequently that I like see some of these people and I'm like, oh, that's really cool. Like I forgot that I did that. And not like, you know, forgetting in sort of like a funny way. It's almost more like, oh, like it's nice to be like reminded, you know, sometimes if you're in like a low place, like you can go back and look at some stuff that you've done that you might be really proud of. So yeah.
Cool. Anybody
yeah.
have any other questions? Stop screen sharing.
What was your favorite music video that you worked on or produced?
That's a good question. I still think there's probably two that kind of fall into that list, and they were actually both from last year. There's a music video that I directed for this artist that I work with named Sasha Sloan, and we shot that last year. It was really meaningful. The song was really important, and we wanted the visuals to reflect that. And we shot it probably like an hour south of Tennessee, and we shot it on black and white 35mm film, which is really cool. So, and it was a one shot, so we only had like basically like one chance. It was sort of if you took like all of the factors and they were like, hey, like don't screw this up, like it was like all at the same time. Because shooting on film is really cool. When you're done with it, you don't really see it until you get it back from the lab. So if something went wrong, then like, you know, you spend a ton of money on something and you can't necessarily redo it. And then shooting a one shot, you have to make sure that you time it out exactly right to where everything lands like on certain moments of the song. So that is for a song called House with No Mirrors. So that's a project, I would say that's probably like my number one. And then there's another project that I did last year. There's a couple actually. There's a song that I did for the band called Coin that actually both of the videos I did for Coin last year were really fun. The one that we did with with Rocket Fire Explosion, the robots, that was a really cool experience. Like getting to go to Aaron's studio was like totally like life-changing, and like shooting that was really cool. And then we shot another project in a junkyard with like an old VHS camera. We had like no money for it, and that turned out to be pretty cool as well, even though we like didn't have any budget. And then right before the pandemic, I did a video for this DJ from Sydney called Young Franco, and we shot, and it was with a rapper, this guy named Pell, who's really cool. And it was sort of different than anything that I had done in the past. It was like a little bit brighter and a little bit warmer and a little bit more like funny. Most of the stuff that I had done up until that point and still do is kind of like on the darker side. So that was a pretty cool project. I'd still say that my favorite project to this day though is that House with No Mirrors video. It's really neat. Sasha's a really cool person, and I'm very grateful I get to work with her, and that project was like really rewarding. Anything I can shoot on film, if I can shoot anything on film, it's like always the goal. I always just think it looks really nice. So yeah, thanks for asking.
Awesome. We'll have to check it out later on.
Yeah, thanks. Will do.
Cool. Last call for any other questions, and then I think we're gonna try and wrap this up.
Oh,
I
but yeah,
think- Oh, go
yeah.
ahead.
Oh yeah, I just want to say this is really fun and helpful. And nice meeting all of you, and I'm excited to look forward. I'm looking forward to seeing all your videos, David.
Thanks, man. I really appreciate that.
Yeah.
No, it was great. It's really great to meet all of you guys via the internet. Do you guys watch that show, This Is Us? You know what I'm talking about?
My mom does.
Yeah, it was cool. Last night, the episode, there was a snippet about the guy who like basically like invented video chat. It was really cool. So I've sort of just had that like present in my mind as we're doing this. I'm like, oh, this is sick that we can do this, and we're all in different parts of the planet essentially, and able to kind of talk to each other. So it's great to meet you guys. Thanks for having me. I'm
Thank you.
honored to talk to all you guys, and hope that my ramblings would be of any insight to anyone. So I know I can kind of spout off. So I'm glad that, you know, it sounds like it went well, I guess, all things considered. But thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for coming and like talking to us. So it definitely was very informational, and I enjoyed the stories. I ramble a lot too, so I get it.
Yeah, the stories are great.
Yeah, we're all in the same boat.
Mm-hmm.
All right, very last thing before we're finally done. And this is for both either David or MVP. For anybody watching this later, what do you recommend as the greatest takeaway from all this, or what to do in their situation away from all this?
Yeah, I would say like biggest piece of advice I could give to like anyone at the end of the day is just like, don't be afraid to reach out. That's sort of like my one like that's like the biggest part of my story, and a lot of other people's stories who I know is just like, don't be afraid to like put yourself out there. That's kind of like my number one piece of advice.
Oh, I guess mine is don't be afraid to start small, and like especially for this most applies to the video production. Don't be afraid to start by just making home movies with your family.
Yeah, I guess I would say just like keep with it. If you're just starting out like filming, just like keep going with it, because you'll eventually like over time you'll get better at it like naturally. Like I've gotten better at it definitely, like just doing it for so many years. Like I've learned a lot of stuff. So, and it's really important to like film, you know, the whole thing. So that's what I'd say.
I'd say go with whatever you want to go with in life. If you have a dream to do something, go for it, because you never know when you're going to get another chance at it.
Cool. Well, again, I thank everybody that came out today. Thank our wonderful guests, MVP and David. Thank you for donating your time tonight. This was really cool to talk to you guys about all this and really hear some insightful information. All right. So I'm going to...
No worries. Thanks for having us.